this. Do you want to
Yes,
create that with our group?
I sure will.
Thank you.
Okay. Intention. Understand that we are not going to fix it today. But my hope is to raise awareness of what Black people go through in this country, in the workplace, and the trauma associated of that experience. I hope, and it is my intention, that many of you will gain an awareness of how you perpetuate and support systemic and structural racism. I hope and intend for you all to be open up to new possibilities for relatedness and action. And finally, the data that I'm sharing is anecdotal data informed by my own life. There's actually a number of women who are on this call who I pull from my support system, and they have shared their experiences with me that I also draw from. That's it.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I'm just going to clear and we're going to deal with this, and we'll make the recording available. Apparently the YouTube stream's not working, and I don't have tech support to set it up. So,
okay.
But we are recording at this point from the intention forward, so we'll share the recording. Okay, we'll figure out a way to do that.
Okay.
Okay. So before we get into the meat of the conversation, a couple of ground rules. First, you're going to be muted. There's going to be some time for questions. When it comes time for questions, the way to participate is to raise your hand. We haven't given you the ability to take yourselves off mute. How you raise your hand is if you look at your control panel, you'll see a participants thing. And if you pull that up, there's a raise hand function at the bottom, okay? And that's how we're gonna manage questions. You're welcome to use the chat. We don't promise to check it as we go. We're gonna be talking. And frankly, I encourage you not to, okay? Just be in the conversation. You know, there will be an opportunity for questions. And I think the last thing as far as ground rules orientation is I want to say what's inarguable in the context of this conversation, all right? We're working from a few definitions here, and that's how we're participating in this conversation, is that these definitions are the truth. Now, you can argue the truth of these definitions. We're not going to argue the truth of these definitions. You got that? So we're just going to take this, you know, whether these are true or not, we're going to act today like they're the truth. So we don't want to get into any arguments or questions about like, well, couldn't racism be that, or couldn't, okay. You know, we're just taking this as kind of the baseline from which we're going to proceed. And if you want to argue about definitions, we can do that some other time, okay? But so a few definitions. First, there's prejudice. And prejudice is prejudging of another person based on social groups they belong to, okay? So, for example, you know, I'm at 7-Eleven, I see a group of Black kids, I get nervous. It has something to do with that they're Black kids. That's prejudice, okay? Then there's discrimination, which is action based on prejudice, okay? This would be, I'm at 7-Eleven, get a little nervous. I see a group of black kids. That's prejudice. Okay. Now I like make sure I like double check my bike and that it's really locked securely, or leave the store or whatever. As a result of that, that's discrimination. Okay. And then racism is when a group's collective prejudice is backed by the power of legal authority and institutional control. I'm going to say that one again. Racism is when a group's collective prejudice is backed by the power of legal authority and institutional control. So from the definition we're working from today, it's not possible for like racism against white people just doesn't exist. Okay. And Nasiah, you look like you have something you want to add to that.
No, I'll confirm it.
Okay, cool.
I'll confirm that.
So there's no reverse racism. There's no, there's no like, wait, what do you mean? There's a black group of behavior analysts and they won't let me in, or isn't that racist? No, it's not. Okay. That's just what we're working from today. Sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So we were going to start with our concerns.
Well, first thing I would like to do, Scott, is really acknowledge that this is difficult. And
Yeah.
at the onset of the process, I was scared.
Yeah.
Because I don't want to model for people that this is easy. This is incredibly scary. And for me, it puts me in a very vulnerable position. I don't know, I won't speak for you, but maybe you could share how you feel having this conversation in a very public way.
Sure. So, I mean, probably my biggest concern is I'm going to piss people off and they're going to get mad at me, right? And do one of two things, which is yell at me or go gossip about me, right? Tell people what a racist I am. Say the wrong thing. Say the thing that's going to have everyone think I'm a racist. I think those are my biggest concerns. Right.
I hear them.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you? You said you're afraid. What do you think you're afraid of?
Just not getting it right. My intentions not being received well. Somebody getting angry at what I say. I think when many of us broach conversations about race and racism, this is what comes up. It's incredibly uncomfortable. It's very much a part of my personality to keep people comfortable, not upset people. And when we engage in these conversations, that is a part of the process. But I showed up and you showed up here today to have this very uncomfortable conversation in a very public way.
Cool. Hey, you know what else I'm afraid of?
What?
People are going to get mad at me and no one's ever going to register for my courses again. Yeah.
Yeah, well.
Cool. Anything else?
You know what I really want to get into, Scott? My question to you,
yeah,
as a white man, what has been your experiences around the use of the words racist and racism?
Well, one, it's bad. Okay. Like that you very clearly shouldn't be racist. It's bad to be racist.
Okay.
And I mean, that's it. And then, there's all the, I think, images that go along with it. Like, like when I picture a racist, I picture like some guy in overalls and a beard, and like that's probably the quintessential racist. He's probably got like a hillbilly hat on, Confederate flags, stuff like that.
Yes.
But I would say at its core, like, you definitely, but should not be racist.
Yes.
Right? Yeah.
Okay. Just so
Like, it's one of the worst things you can be.
I would agree with that. That has been our socialization around the word. Okay, what I'm going to share, this information I'm about to share, speaks to what you just said. And I think it's revolutionary information. It was obtained, or I came across it in Robin DiAngelo's work, White Fragility. What she does in her work is she talks about the good, bad binary as it relates to the word racist and racism. What is the good, bad binary? So who have we labeled the racist as? How have we labeled that word? First of all, the racist is bad. The racist is ignorant, bigoted, prejudiced, mean-spirited, old, probably Southern, immoral, and socially unacceptable. Who wants that label attached to them? What human being? The other side of the binary is the non-racist. The non-racist is good, educated, progressive, liberal, open-minded, well-intentioned, typically young, northern, moral, and socially acceptable.
Yeah, that's me.
That's right. That's pretty much, probably everybody on this call would identify with the non-racist. So
I don't call myself young anymore. Middle-aged.
Okay. So what has that done? This binary has, I think, caused more damage to me as a Black woman than anything. Why? Because my very well-intentioned, liberal and progressive white colleagues, friends, don't look at themselves in terms of having racist behaviors. So racism is always out there. What that bad person is doing, what that cop did, what the neighbor did, what that woman did. We have to switch it up. We have to understand that you can be a well-intentioned, liberal, white person, a good white person, and still be a racist, still have racist behaviors that maintain systemic and structural racism in this country. Did everybody watch the woman who called the police on the Black man that was bird watching?
Yeah.
Did y'all see that?
Amy Cooper.
Went, huh?
Amy Cooper, I think.
Amy Cooper, okay. Amy was in the park. Amy she had her dog, and the dog was off leash. The Black man said, "Ma'am, can you please put your dog back on the leash?" What did Amy do? She called the police, but beyond that, she went into her act because she knew, okay, I can call the police, I'll fix you. I know she knew what will happen. She knew what the result would be. Maintaining and supporting systems and structures of racism. But when confronted, when she was found out, because everything is on camera these days, she vehemently said, "I am not a racist," because that's not what she identifies with. So That, to me, if you get nothing else out of this conversation today, understand you can be a good, well-intentioned white person and still be a racist and have racist behaviors. You know, because largely, Scott, I think it's implicit bias. It's things that we are unaware of. And for us in this field, that's not what we deal with. We deal with the observable and the measurable. Okay, so this is a stretch for many of us as behavior analysts. What are your thoughts, Scott?
Well, I mean, one, looking at behavior analysis, I think one trap we fall into is that we think we know something about behavior, and then somehow that puts us outside of it. Do you know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So it's like, oh, I know how people work. I'm objective now, right? And I don't think that's the case. I do think here's where I would like to look from, because that they call her Central Park Karen now. Like, that's a pretty extreme example, right?
Yes.
Like, that's pretty blatantly, like, I mean, I think any one of us would agree that, yeah, that was pretty racist. Saying, I'm going to call the cops and say a black man, and they're going to like come and, you know, take you away.
Yes.
And I don't think anyone has a problem looking at that as a racist, right?
Right.
And so when I look at that, personally, it's easy for me to say, okay, well, I don't do that stuff, you know. I've never threatened the black, like, I'm going to call the cops and tell them a black person's messing with me, right? So, like, it kind of goes back right into what you were just saying, where it's like, it's easy to say, not me, right? I'm going to ask you a question I'm scared to ask you, all right? And you have my full permission to be honest and straight with me.
Okay.
Have you seen me do stuff that, like, you would say, like, that's part of it? Like, that's part of it. Because honestly, if I've done that stuff, like, I'm not aware of it, right?
Because of the nature of our interaction and relationship, I haven't had an opportunity to observe you in a variety of settings.
Yeah. But
So
you've seen me in board meetings.
I've seen you in board meetings. I will tell you that overwhelmingly, you are white male. In white male with racist behaviors, I haven't seen, but I see patterns.
What does that mean? Like, overwhelmingly, I'm white male.
Well, I see patterns of, if I can be frank and honest, patterns of some white male dominance.
Uh-huh.
Okay, let me give you an example. At one of our last meetings, you know, we are in the middle of this pandemic. At that time, it was I think maybe 5-6 weeks in.
Yeah.
So we're meeting over Zoom. You are one of two folks who are a part of this, who were a part, there were only two males, and you were one of them, okay?
Oh,
I remember, yes, okay.
Yeah.
I remember folks trickling in. It was a meeting set for 9 o'clock. A couple people trickled in at 9:02, 9:03.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying, folks, if you're gonna be late, you need to make sure you connect. Well, see, this is where the white male dominance come in. And the ladies on this call now, and possibly some of the men, you're gonna relate to this. Through this pandemic, what we have had to do is shift our work home. Yeah. Several of the women in that meeting are moms.
Yeah.
And believe it or not, it takes, in order for some of us to detach and I have a 21-year-old, in order for some of us to detach and make it to these virtual meetings on time is a lot of work, because
Okay,
our
good.
children are not used to disconnecting from us at home. So we're going to have to just let it go. And again, I think that's white male dominance from your frame. Why can't you be here at 9:03? But again, this is something, Scott, I'm not calling you, wouldn't call you a chauvinist. This is your lens, your implicit bias. This is what you bring to the world. So your responsibility is not always to get it right, because I don't always get it right. None of us do. Your responsibility is to be woke to it, be aware, and okay, move on. But
Cool. Hey, I'm gonna cut you off. Just because I kind of want to stay on the track. So I got that, appreciate it. That gives me something to look at, right? And I appreciate you being frank. So here's what I'd like. So maybe we can get more of a sense of like the racial piece, right? Like an example of something that, so maybe if you haven't seen me do it, but something someone like me could do that like just not aware of, you know?
Let me go back to talk about this binary piece, because it's important. Because that racist person, the one who we describe as bad, has very little impact on my life, seriously.
Yeah.
It is the person who is socially acceptable and very covert in their white supremacy. It is the white person who is sitting in the meeting and sees a Black person being disrespected and won't say anything. It is the white person who says they're colorblind and they don't see color. It is the white people who segregate themselves by living in all white neighborhoods. It's Eurocentric curriculum. It is blaming the victim. It's hiring discrimination. So it's all those little things, particularly the silence that I see among, again, well-intentioned liberal white people, that is most damaging to me as a Black woman, and most traumatizing.
Yeah. Could you say a little bit more about like how it, like, what is the damage?
From my lens, it perpetuates it. It normalizes it. It keeps it going. White people, it's on you. It's on you as a white man to really be instrumental in being a change agent around racism. So once you are aware, when you see it, say something. Say something. And guess what? Just like I said before, I recognize that it's hard. We talk about peer pressure in terms of our children, but we are all subjected to peer pressure. But little by little, speak out. If you see, like right now, how many of you in the workplace, or Scott, how many of the organizations, agencies you've contacted in the past week have made space to honor this experience and the trauma, speak to it, that Black people have experienced here in the last week? How many people have had conversations about a Black man being killed, murdered by the police? I've been a part of my organization for more than a decade, and we have not had that conversation. But let me ask you this, Scott. Do you remember Sandy Hook? Do you remember 9/11? Did you have conversations in the workplace regarding those events that also, really, some of those events didn't disrupt the world as much as the murder of this Black man? And nobody is talking about it. Think about this, Scott. How am I going to feel as a Black woman? This has happened. Our lives have been, again, disrupted, not just here, but around the world. And my place of employment hasn't spoke to it. I need white people to speak out about that. Create spaces to have these conversations. Check in.
Yeah, so let's talk about that, right? And I'm being a little sensitive to time because it's 10:35.
Oh, wow.
I know, right? Time flies.
Wow.
And we're like on our first bullet point. So here's something I do want to talk about, right? So one, let me see if I just got it, all right? Because at some level, I just know I don't get it, right? But I've like had that experience where something happens in my life and I'm dealing with it, and then I got to go somewhere and get something done, like go to work, whatever. I'm accountable for something somewhere, and I'm dealing with it, and no one else is dealing with it.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like, trying to, the most obvious experience is like when my dad died, right? So it's like this incredible loss for me. And then there's meetings to go to, and there's, you know, and even then it might get mentioned, right? Like, oh, sorry for your loss. But then it's kind of like, well, whether it's there or not, like I feel like there's a certain expectation, like I just got to get over it and go on.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And so I got that, right? Like I think what I said resonates to what you're talking about. What I'm clear I don't get is that there's something distinct about my dad dying versus something that's all over the news.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? In that piece, well, yeah, so I can't say I get your experience, and then it creates something, and like, wow, that's got to be an experience, you know?
It is.
Yeah.
I want to speak to it. I want
Yeah,
to
go ahead.
expand on that, because I really want to make sure that people understand what's happening and be able to really become aware to why Black America, and let's be clear, you know, there's something very anti-Black about our country, and there has been for a very long time. Let me go back, and I'm going to make myself vulnerable here and share a story, Scott, that I haven't been able to share in the past couple days without crying.
Mm-hmm.
Some of you on this call are old enough to remember Mayor Harold Washington, the first Black mayor of the city of Chicago. I was 10 years old when he was in office and the year that he passed away.
Yeah.
I've shared with many of you my upbringing, although I grew up in Joliet, Illinois, in a neighborhood that we term the hood. I was educated in a very affluent, all-white school. So I was in this school from first grade all the way up to 8th grade, and I was the only little Black girl in my class. So when he passed in, I think it would have been like 80, or the early to mid 80s, I remember being 10 years old. I was in the 5th grade. And I remember I was devastated. Now, I didn't live in Chicago, but Mayor Washington to me was a hero, because as a little Black girl, we don't get to see ourselves in positions of power. I have a lot of education. I've had 2 Black teachers my whole life. I had 1 Black elementary school gym teacher and 1 Black professor. So when we see people in power, it means so much. Those are our heroes. So he passed away that day. I was 10 years old. And 10-year-olds don't have the language to explain trauma. I just knew I felt something in the pit of my stomach. And I knew I didn't have anybody to go to about my pain. I remember that day like it was yesterday. 10 years old, he passed away. I had nobody to talk to about it. So I held back my tears that whole day. I swallowed my pain. And at 10 years old, I carried on with my day. Scott, Black people in this country, that's what we have to do on a daily damn basis. Swallow it and keep going. That's what this anger is about. We don't get to stop. When I had that moment of silence, that's because I am really fearful of the mental health of Black people in this country, because we just keep going. We have to, for survival.
Yeah.
It's for survival. But that's it. So when I think about what happened with the knee in the man's neck, and I'm sorry, I don't want to re-traumatize, but that is the vivid picture in my mind. I think about what he meant to some Black child. And he's not there anymore. And the blatant disregard for his life. Black bodies are dying. They get killed for no reason. And it feels to me as a Black woman, nobody gives a damn. So that's it. So can you imagine the trauma, a collective trauma of Black people in this country? Because honestly, Scott, it's a luxury not to be aware, because as a Black woman, I have to be aware of everything I do, of everything I say. Because if I'm not, there are consequences to that. I could lose my job. You know, the white lady who called the police on the man, yes, white women are a protected class. They get protection. If I'm in the workplace, who is going to defend me as the Black woman? 9 out of 10 times, if I am vulnerable and if I do force my concerns, I become the angry Black woman. So I have to defend myself against that label and that stereotype. So Scott, I hope you understand.
Well, hold on. So I think I want to point to something, because there might be something valuable for people here, right? So first off, thanks for sharing that. I can see people are moved here, right? One thing I think, and I shared this with you earlier, right?
Yes.
One thing that I think white people deal with is our own fear, right? And I shared what you laughed at me, but then you got it, right? But I shared that, one thing that comes up for me around all of this, including Me Too and Black Lives Matter, is, I'm the problem, right? And maybe not Scott as individual, but Scott as 45-year-old white guy, as a class, I'm the problem, right? And so there's like a certain reaction I have relating to myself that way as like, oh shit, they're coming for me, you know?
And I'm
Um,
sorry. I keep laughing about that when
yeah,
I hear it, but for you, that's real.
yeah. Um, and I'm going somewhere with this, right? Now I don't, now there's like, that's fear, okay? And that's there, and there's not a lot to do about it, except notice it, see it, and then realign myself to my commitment, right? Because me hunkering down and being like, I'm gonna break back, that's not what I'm committed to, right? Um, and act is a pretty useful thing for that. Um, but why I'm bringing this up now is I think there's something for white people to really discover here. Okay. So another thing that I experience and what I'm getting present to, what I'm seeing for myself right now, is there's a certain resentment that comes up that, and it's around Me Too, it's around Black Lives Matter, all of it for white people, I suspect, okay, because I can kind of tact it in myself, that is like, well, now I'm going to have to be careful. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want to watch what I say, and I don't want to, you know? Um, Now, what I'm getting present to now is, okay, so like I'm dealing with that for myself, and I'm probably not the only white person dealing with this. It sounds like that's kind of like just the baseline for people of color.
Yeah.
Is like, I gotta be like, I don't want to be careful. Well, guess what? Like, you gotta be careful all the time, and there's gotta be some sort of like welcome to my world about it for you, right? Yeah.
It is. I want to say a couple things. When I
Yeah.
talk about being introspective and looking at ourselves, that includes me.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I'm very present to, and I'm going to own this right now, is I have invested much of my life in keeping white people comfortable.
Yeah.
And not having the conversations that need to be had, not sharing the information that needs to be shared. Now, there's been some very real reasons I had to keep white people comfortable that I am no longer committed to, but I have been complicit in racism myself. That's how I've done it. You know why? Because I wanted to maintain my coveted middle class lifestyle. And I know if I am the Black woman, Scott, who is really calling people out, guess what? That may mean I will not be employed for too long. So I think that is just important to share. Also, I want to speak to Scott, when I've sustained as a Black woman this level of trauma over the years, it tires you out.
Yeah.
Have you heard on the news people say, I'm tired. I'm tired. Scott, is labor intensive, especially
Yeah.
I'm 48 years old. I have been at this a long time. I'm tired. I think what we're seeing, the reactions of Black people in this country, is we are tired. We're tired. I know I am. I have a 21-year-old son. So I remember back in the early 90s when Rodney King went down. And here we are in 2020. I have a 21-year-old now, and he's saying the same thing. That means we did something wrong. So the way we've been doing it hasn't worked. I'm tired. I'm ready for something new. And I would say the country is. Black America is ready for something different now because what we've done hasn't worked.
Hey, I want to, we're going to jump ahead because you had some things you wanted people to take away from this, right?
I did. Let me.
Yeah. So I don't want to miss out on that. So what do white people need to do?
What I'd ask is that white folks engage in just ongoing self-awareness, because the question today is not whether or not you are racist, but keep asking yourself, how are you supporting and maintaining systemic and structural racism? It's not out there. It's not something out there. I want you to look within your own household. I want you to look within your own place of employment, as an agency owner, as an employee. So make that ongoing, some deep reflective practice. Continuing education.
Wait, hold on. I want to make this a little more real. Okay.
Okay.
Because here's the thing, so many of these training are like, be self-aware, right? And I don't know that telling people to go be self-aware makes a difference, right? What do you think? Like, if we left people with an assignment, would it be reasonable to say, go find 3 ways you contribute to like structural systemic racism?
That would be amazing.
Okay, cool.
I think that would be amazing.
All right, so there's one takeaway. All right. So here's what I'm going to do with this next part. You keep talking, and then I'm gonna listen for like, how do we make that actionable? All right. Cool.
Continuing education.
Yeah.
I want everybody to continue to sit in uncomfortable spaces and do the work needed to disrupt racist systems. Disrupt it. That may mean if you see disparity in your workplace, you be the one to speak out on it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Don't just say that's how it is. You be the one to ask the question, why are there no Black people here? Why are we holding this employee to a different standard? You speak out on it. If you hear somebody tell a racist joke, you be the one who say, you know what, that's incredibly racist. Call it out. No longer sit in silence. Be uncomfortable. The next one, relationship building. And this is what I want to say about the relationship piece. What I've come to realize is when I hear white people say, I have a Black friend, they were often referring to the Black person they work with, have a casual relationship at the grocery store or the gym with. If you are referring to the person you work with as your friend, you could be friendly, but what I want you to recognize, oftentimes who we as Black people, how we show up for work is not truly our authentic selves. The person you know from work may not be who you really think they are, because it's not safe for us to be our authentic selves in the workplace.
Can I ask a question?
I want you to, hold on, Scott.
Okay.
What I want everyone to do is just start from there, because when you start addressing some of these barriers, these systemic and structural practices, what you'll see is people can more fully bring themselves to work. And then you can see, we can start developing some authentic, real relationships. Because what I see, the cross-cultural cross-racial relationships we have are not real. They're not real if you are basing it on, this is the relationship I have with somebody at work. Because those of you on this call who know me from work and know me outside of work, you know it's different. And I'm working on integrating that. You know, part of that is my fault, again, because at work I've tended to keep white people comfortable. But again, those of you who know me know the difference. And what I like to say is the me outside of work is just so much more fun, so much more relatable. And I want to be able to bring that self to work, but it has not been safe to.
Here's what I'm wondering is, how do you build relationships? Right? And I'm thinking, I mean, there's a lot I'm thinking. We're probably going to go past 11. So one thing, I was like looking at that, right? Like, okay, so who am I calling? Like, you know, because I say I have Black friends, like, are we really friends? Right? And how do we define that? I'm curious, are we friends, you and I?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know. I was like, I think we're becoming friends, you know? Definitely. But and then it kind of boiled down to like, okay, who would I reach out to a favor, or who would I think it wasn't weird if they reached out to me for a favor, right? And that seemed like a pretty good baseline. But I expect that now, like, I happen to be in an environment where like I'm around Black people, right? But I'm curious if you're not there, and like, how do you do this? How do you?
Let me try to answer.
Because it would be weird to me if I came up to you and said, hey, you know, I realized I don't have a lot of Black friends. I'm looking for a couple of you guys. Can I consider you for this position? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Okay, let me tell you what it is, because I think a lot about this. I do have white folks in my life who are my allies, and who roll with me for damn near 30, 40 years.
Yeah.
You know what it is? They're the white people who share this burden of racism with me. They share it. These are the white folks that are coming into my environment, and they've been uncomfortable, and they sit in spaces where it's uncomfortable for them. They may not be popular, but they come to support me.
Yeah.
And when I see that, I'm like, hell yeah, they can roll with me. You know, but it's if you're a white person and the expectation is always that the Black person is coming into your environment, we pick up on that, because every Black person on this call right now, we know who our allies are. And again, that's unconscious, but we know who the white people are who are going to show up for us, who are speaking for us outside of the room when nobody is looking. And they're the ones who are sharing the burden. You know, those are the people who, you know, aren't jumping to write the damn diversity statement because the call was put out for it. These are the people who've been rolling with me for years, fighting for Black people, with and for Black people for years. You know, speaking on diversity statements, there's something so disingenuous. You know, that call was put out for everybody to get a diversity statement, but I want to know, where is the conversation? You know, statement that doesn't mean anything if there's not some real action to support it.
Yeah.
So that's it. I want everyone to share the burden. You will have to go to spaces where you may be the only one. I want to see that because that's my experience. I am often the only one.
Yeah. Okay. Can I offer something? And I want you to share your experience of this, right? So what kicked off this conversation was I called you on Saturday, right?
Mhm.
And was like, hey, how you doing?
Mhm.
And then, what was immediately there, and I expect it's going to be there for anyone. Well, I said, one thing I see about myself is that when I'm talking to you, race is present here in a way that it isn't if I'm talking to like, Ashley or Ben or Benjamin or Jen, all these people I'm looking at, right? Like I'm just present to it, and then, so then at some point I said, like, I just notice I'm being careful here, right? So can I have your permission to fuck up a little bit? And you have my permission to let me know when I F up. And it seemed like that worked, like to actually like get the conversation moving. And now here we are, right?
Yes.
What was your experience of that?
Scott, it's my life. I'm so habituated to it.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't, you bring to this relationship, yours and our relationship, a lot of privilege.
Mm-hmm.
This is my life. Again, I have to, as a Black woman, I have to know so much about white folks. I've been in your environments for all my life, been to the white schools, had been at jobs where I'm the only one. I know the music you listen to. I know the music you listen to, the food you eat, the bars you go to. I know a whole lot because I have to. Again, my survival depends on it.
Right.
So that is kind of my life. So I didn't have any reactions to what you said, kind of one way or the other. That's just kind of the way it is.
Okay. So there was nothing weird or like problematic about me saying that.
Mm-mm.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm glad there was nothing there for you, and it worked for me to be like just relax a little bit so we could actually talk, right?
Yeah.
So I wasn't in the conversation like I gotta say the right thing or
Nope. And I think I let go of getting it right a
Mhm.
long time ago. My roots are from the South. My family is from rural Alabama. And going there, I went there for every summer for most of my life. That's the thing about people in the South. They really don't care about getting it right. And actually, that's very refreshing to me.
Yeah.
It's something transparent about dealing with people who are unconcerned about getting it right.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, I wasn't thinking this in the moment, but it's kind of like a little act move where it's just like bring awareness to it, then let it be there so that you can actually have a little freedom to move, right? Um, okay, cool. Anything else you want to say about what white people can do?
Well, I know I forwarded to you a list of resources. If you could
Yes.
make those available to everyone.
Yeah.
Beautiful Humans had an outstanding podcast and it is on YouTube now. I don't know what it was titled, but it's excellent. Please, Beautiful Humans, YouTube, search it and please watch that podcast. Denisha Jingles did an excellent job with that.
Okay, cool. Doesn't look like she's here, or if she was here, she had to leave.
But I did include her podcast in that list of resources. And then I sent you a couple book lists too. Those book lists are outside of behavior analytic research. in literature, because we do. At this point, in order for us, many of us are behavior analysts, we have to go outside of the field to get information to inform our practice.
Cool. You want to take some questions?
Sure.
You got time for that? We're already at 11:04.
Yeah,
okay.
I have time.
Raise your hands. Cool. We got Jonathan. So I'm going to click ask to unmute. Jonathan, can you come off mute now? Is that working? I've never done this before.
Yeah, I don't.
Hello?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, I would love to hear those definitions you gave at the beginning on prejudice, discrimination, and racism. Just
You
so
want to hear them again?
Yeah, I would love to hear them again so I can write them down.
You know what? I can put them in the email.
Okay, wonderful.
Prejudice is prejudging based on the social groups. Discrimination is action based on prejudice. Racism is a group's collective prejudice backed by the power of legal authority and institutional control.
Yeah, I think the one of racism is a great definition, and one when I've seen my white friends post of I'm not racist and I'm not that, and so even just the idea of explaining that even in the dictionary there's racism is just a belief of people based on their race, and that's not what it is. It's people are in power who can make those discriminatory. Yes, everyone can be discriminatory, everyone can take those actions, and everyone has some sort of bias, but for racism to happen, it's when you're backed by power. And obviously as someone who looks like this, I'm part of that group. And so it's hard. It's been a hard 4 years for me to kind of understand that I'm a part of it, but then understanding where my privileges comes in, and I'm able to turn off my thoughts about it and decide I don't want to be uncomfortable right now. I'm not going to engage. And that's a privilege that I have. And then a lot of white people feel that being told that they have privilege is that's the worst thing that they can have. And really, if that's the worst thing that you can have, then man, what a hard life.
Yes. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you. We got Jonathan has his hand up. And so you should be able to unmute yourself.
I think I just spoke. Sorry, I think I didn't know how to put my hand down.
Oh, sorry. All right, Anders.
Hi, thank you for sharing.
Hi.
In some way, I think I'm just commenting about like the interaction I'm listening to. So in this type of question, when I, as a listener, share my own like guilt and fears, I'm doing so to relate. At the same time, I'm making the crisis about me and my feelings rather than the person I'm listening to. So my question is, how do I listen?
That's a good question for you, Sky.
And I wasn't listening at all. I was trying to like look at the chat. I'm sorry.
How do you listen?
Oh, how do you listen?
Yeah, you have a good repertoire of listening skills.
Lots and lots of work. So one, you got to notice that most of the time you're not listening. You're just not, right? I say things to you like, I just said, and I'm talking to everyone here, the person in your underwear right now, you're mostly not listening. And for some of you, you went like, is that true? Yes, I am. I'm a good listener. He's not talking like, no, you actually didn't get what I said. You reacted to what I said and started paying attention to that. That's not listening, right? I would say listening is getting what someone has to say without adding anything, subtracting anything, or evaluating anything, right? And then there's levels, because there's more to communication than just the representational words that someone says. There's actually the emotionality, and it works in communication to assume that someone's always coming from a commitment. Someone's always coming from a commitment. If they're angry, if they're upset, if they're hurt, if they're yelling F you, they wouldn't be yelling at that if they didn't care. So it actually works to listen for what they care about, right? And probably it's not, you know, their real interest isn't to hurt you or to call you an idiot or, you know, to make you feel bad. Like there's some bigger commitment that maybe they're not skillfully communicating. That is there, that if you can hear it, you know, it'll get you on the same side. Now, how do you do that? Well, you should take my courses. I'll train you.
Thank you for the question, and thank you for the answer, Scott.
We got JT. JT, you should be able to come off mute.
Hello.
Hey, JT.
I just want to hi. I just want to speak from a different point of view. I felt like it was important for me to be here. I come to all of your meetings every week. I don't take off my camera because when we're talking about how do you feel, acceptance and commitment, from my learning history, I know that the majority of the people in this group will not feel comfortable just speaking with me. I know as a BCBA working with parents, they will not feel comfortable, you know, with their child. And this is just one of the things where I don't think you realize how much I have to think about who's in these breakout rooms, what I'm going to say during these breakout rooms, what I'm going to wear to these breakout rooms, how I'm going to speak. It's like all these little details. I could go on and write an entire paper for how much I have to be conscious of in these breakout rooms, what I talk about, just so many details where it's like, what is the issue? You could list thousands of issues with just your 5-minute breakout rooms. And I just want to recognize just within this group, how much of a privilege that no one has to think about the thousands of details that goes into those maybe 3-minute breakout rooms, 5-minute breakout rooms. What story am I going to share? Am I going to be genuine? And honestly, I guess the bigger question I want to ask is, we're focusing on what can white people do? What can people, you know, not experiencing this do? But I'm more curious, what can I do? If I speak up, I'm risking my job. If I say something on Facebook, I'm risking my job. If I send the wrong text, that so many things I have to consider. So I actually don't know, and no one talks about what is my appropriate response. And ma'am, if you can speak on behalf of your son, because my mom would be saying the same thing. And my mom would just tell me, JT, just be quiet, cut your hair, speak nicely, because she doesn't want me to fight that fight. But it's real. It's real. There's no solution.
Thank you. Thank you for that question. This is what I'll say, and I don't know if everybody heard me when I said much of my career it's been invested in keeping white people comfortable. And there's a very real reason for that, because my survival is very much tied to keeping white people comfortable. I wish I had a solution to your problem. It's hard, because you are correct. We do have to monitor everything we say, everything we do, because there's consequences if we don't. What has happened to me, I am a 48-year-old Black woman who I have less in terms of responsibilities. So I have a little bit more freedom to say what I want, do what I want. And I think because I have a lot of women on this call who I consider them my mentees. And I don't want them to wait until they're 48 to find their voice and start speaking out on issues. What I will say, find out, because this is where I'm at now. Find out what is truly important to you. Right now, it's important to me to stay in integrity with what my beliefs are. I believe that racism is wrong, and because of that, I'm going to actively speak out against racism, however uncomfortable it is. If that means I lose my job, I will have to lose my job. And I'm also committed to not just losing my job. I'm not leaving somewhere without a fight. So I'm going to make it harder for people to just get rid of me. But it's no easy answer for that, because the truth of our reality is Black people, we don't have the privilege of being able to say and do whatever we want without consequences.
Thank you. Thank you, JT. Nancy Lee, and then Simone.
Yep.
You have next.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, so first I want to say just how grateful I am to be here for this conversation. I have to say I'm really emotional because this period has been really emotional for me. And I want to acknowledge that as a BIPOC, but also I have privilege as a fair-skinned Asian, and I have been engaged in DEI work for a very long time. And I've been an advocate and ally for a very long time. And so I actually have multiple sort of ways in which I'm experiencing this. And I'm also a psychotherapist. And a high percentage of my caseload are people of color. I think my question really centers around the ACT and ACBS communities. And what I really have seen is so much white privilege and hierarchy and intellectualization. And I just, I think I really am curious, how do we move forward? What are some things that you both could see us doing differently, better? Because really what I would love to see is change as well. And I'm willing to step up and do my part, but I have no idea how things are going to change within that system.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'm going to leave this to Nasiah to say something, because my answer would be, oh, let me fix it, the 45-year-old white guy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Which community are you speaking to?
The ACT and ACBS. Yeah.
So it's the Association for Contextual Behavior Science.
Oh.
It's like the ACT RFT community.
So you're asking, what can we do to just move these conversations forward?
I think, how can these organizations function and look different? Whether it's a conversation, whether it's, honestly, I know it's a very big question. But the bottom line is, if you're talking about saying, well, let's go do some continuing education, those continuing education may not actually be sufficient. And really, to your point, well, we go out and get these additional resources. I mean, there's so much that I have to put into actually integration and practice. And a lot of it actually ends up feeling like microaggressions as well.
Yes. Let me say this, because what I've developed a very healthy respect for, especially in the last couple years where I've been significantly more involved in policy, in professional organizations, is the presence of making sure that there's a presence of people of color in leadership and in these organizations, so it doesn't become the tail wagging the dog. And I think we have to make sure that in the leadership, in the committees, there's enough people represented that these issues are brought up and addressed. I sit on a legislative committee, and it's interesting when I hear different ideas proposed, there's never a thought of how some of these ideas could impact Black or brown communities. So I think it's critically important that that's where we start. We make sure that there is enough decision-making power within these organizations. Because right now, I would say that there's not. You know, I did a diversity analysis of the lecture series at Skinner's lecture series for ABAI. And in the past 3 years, they have not had, I think they may have had 1 or 2 invited Black speakers. ABAI is our gold standard of professional organizations, and people look to the Skinner Lecture Series for leadership, but we are not represented. And I think one of the things that I'm doing on a very personal level, especially for those that I mentor throughout the state of Illinois, is making sure that they are a part of our professional organization, ILABA, and then making sure that they become active so we can eventually begin to move into more roles of leadership and have some decision-making power. Because now I see that as a huge barrier to having interests met and addressed.
Hey, something, I got a question. I'm gonna burst into the questions here. Because I go to those legislative meetings with you, right? And it just occurred to me, so, you know, one thing you and I have talked about privately is, you know, one of the concerns, and this might get to what JT was saying as well, but one of the things that's just there is like this concern for showing up as the angry Black woman, right? So I wonder if, and, you know, and that just, for me, it's like not there, right? I'm one of the people you have to worry about. I'm not worried about that. I'm wondering if it would make a difference if, like, in those meetings, and I mean, this is something potentially anyone could do, right? If I said, like specifically said, I want to hear from Nasiah on this, right? Like, knowing that could be a concern for you, that, oh, if I say something, am I just going to be this?
Yes.
Like, and I'm wondering if that would work for you.
I don't know. Let's try it next time.
Legislative meetings?
Yeah. Let's see. I think, and that's real, what you're speaking to, the angry Black woman. And for those of us with female Black bodies on this call, we know what that is. And we know that we have to avoid it because it has some repercussions. And many of us, and I just wrote a paper for behavior analysis and practice that talks about Black women's and leaders, or Black women's barriers to leadership in ABA, and identify being the only one and fighting that stereotype is a significant barrier. And does everybody, can everybody here relate to that stereotype of the Black woman is angry, hostile, not a team player?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, everyone's scared to nod, but yeah, they all can.
Don't be afraid. I've lived it.
Hey, I think I took, Simone, you should be able to come off mute.
Okay, so I first wanted to just address what Anders said when he asked the question about just how can he listen. And I think another part of the listening piece, just speaking for me personally, is not giving an answer. So say you get put in a situation where someone is like on a rant and we're talking about how, you know, we get treated these certain types of ways, or how we are always placed in these uncomfortable environments, just giving an ear to hear it and not to present or to give your opinion on it, because sometimes it's not that we necessarily want to answer, we just want to feel like we are heard. And I think that's like one of the biggest pieces for me that I want, you know, people to consider in terms of listening. And then the question that I had was similar to kind of what you guys were just talking about. So I feel like a lot of it is like, well, what can other individuals do to help support us through this. And then I'm just thinking about like times that I've been in meetings or times that I've been in situations where it's been an opportunity where other individuals could have said something and have not spoken up for us. But then I also feel like sometimes the thing about racism is that when you experience it so much, like she said, like we become habituated to it. And so we don't always recognize. I personally know that I've missed times where I'm like, oh man, like that was racist. Like I didn't even catch that because it's so common. And so I think you guys have the same perspective in terms of like, you miss it because you don't always have this interaction. You don't always have, you know, this type of just an interaction with or just some type of feeling concerning how things are presented. And so I think it's a lot to say, hey, maybe you guys should speak up and speak out for us when you don't know or recognize that that was actually a time for you to speak up and speak out. So how can we, my question is, how can we, like in the Black community or even brown community, help to support them to feel like, okay, this is like, Naj, this is one of those moments where I might need some support.
You know what, in the moment, I think it's tough, like you said, because people miss it. This is where doing that front end work of becoming aware is gonna help. I think it's hard in the moment, and I don't have a quick answer for what to do in the moment, but that front end work of, I think will build competency and fluency of when it happens, you'll know it and you can respond.
I'm looking at that too. I'm just thinking, because Simone, come off mute for a second again. Can you still? No, I'm gonna unmute you. It sounded like, I mean, it sounded kind of like a question for me, like, how can we help you see this stuff? Did I pick up on that?
Yeah, so I think it was a question for both, but
yeah,
she kind of answered with her perspective. So like, yeah, I would like you to consider it that way.
Yeah, I mean, here's what I can tell you is, and maybe I'm unique in this, but probably not. You know, like race is just this thing where I'm like, I don't know my place, and you know, and I know to some degree I'm privileged. I probably have no idea the degree to which I'm privileged, right? And there is a concern for, like, you know, there's like this thing called the white savior right now, right? So one thing I dealt with personally when I was putting this together was, fuck, am I just being the white savior here? You know, am I just going to show up as this obnoxious white guy who, like, I got the answers for you, you know? And so that was a thought I had that, you know, and I've got some ACT training, so, you know, I could look at, okay, well, what am I actually committed to? And okay, that's a thought. I don't need to back off from that. And there's a way to actually approach this that'll make a difference for people where I'm not providing the answers, et cetera, et cetera. I'm sharing all this because like that noise was still there, and it was something that had me like step back, right? And like that'll have me like not be a leader in something that I'm actually committed to, right? It doesn't work for me that, you know, like I have this friend who's walking around scared all the time. I don't know if I'm even really answering your question anymore. The question is, how do you do that? And maybe, so personally, like I wouldn't be offended if someone asked me to be an ally. You know what I'm saying? And maybe it's going to take something that, because I'm frankly a little bit afraid to step forward, and I imagine other white people could be afraid to step forward and say, hey, I want you to know I'm your ally. You know, like it is just such a, that it's like, okay, like just that, are you getting the of it? I don't necessarily have a word for it, but it is kind of easy to say like, you know what, I'll go do something else. Did that answer your question and provide anything?
A little bit. I mean, I think that it even like brought up something else, and just really quickly, because I don't want to hold everybody up. But just I think it made me even consider like even just like when we are working with our clients and we consider like those precursor behaviors, I think that it would be cool. I mean, I don't know how realistic it is, but I think it would be cool if like we could identify a list of like precursor phrases, or you know, like different things that kind of like when you hear these things in meetings, like when we're making these types of laws and putting these things in place, this is not considering us. You know what I mean? Because I think that at that point, now it's like, that's a flag for me. Like now I'm automatically paying more attention to it versus like pie in the sky, just trying to figure out like, is this one of those moments that I should say something?
Yes.
But that's just a thought. But thank you.
I think that's a great thought, Simone. I like that.
Thank you.
And I'm all about antecedent interventions.
All right, Saturday.
Okay, hi. So I'm Satara, and I really just wanted to just share a really short experience for the sake of just sharing. I feel like in this space, that's what's needing to happen. So just a really short story. I was walking into a gas station to buy gas, and I'm only giving you details so I can bring you into my story.
Yeah.
So I'm walking into the gas station to purchase gas. There was another Caucasian male, and he was on his phone. He, you know, had his business suit on, and he was busy. He had 3 Cokes or Pepsis in his hand. And as soon as I was walking up into the counter to, you know, go ahead and purchase my gas, I wasn't purchasing anything else. He came right in front of me and set all of his items down while still on the phone, didn't acknowledge me. And then the I don't know what I would call the person working in the gas station, and he was also a Caucasian male, and we made eye contact. And he was either giving one of 2 messages. One message was, "Please don't say anything," and the other message was, I mean, I don't even know at that point. I felt, please don't say anything right now.
Yeah.
And I didn't. And at that moment, I remember taking a step back, and he paid for his item still on his phone. And the person working and I, we're continuing to make contact, and I just stood there and waited for the transaction to be over. He left, and then I purchased my gas, and nothing was said about the interaction in and of itself. It was just, hey, can I have 20 on pump, whatever.
Yeah.
And I wanted to share that because one thing that, you know, personally I've done over the years is I've altered myself and my behaviors and my reactions in so many instances that they've become conditioned at this point. Naturally, I believe it's, you know, a proper response to say, hey, I was here first.
Yes.
But that's not my natural response anymore.
Yes.
My natural response is to back up. And I just wanted to share because I do think for so many Black people, our natural responses have altered because of our experiences over time. And just to also share another really short piece as far as the angry Black woman, that notion. You know, some of you know me, and I always have a plastered smile on my face. And that is because that's conditioned too. I'm not always just happy. But I want to give you this expression even before we even make a conversation, because I need to show you, hey, I'm okay. And I don't want any, you know, I want to make you feel comfortable. I don't want any additional problems that may come from our conversation, you know, anything like that. So just those 2 pieces, I really thought it was important to just share, because personally, those have been the 2 parts of myself that I've just allowed to be altered because of my experiences and to, you know, maintain the comfort of everyone else. And I don't think it's fair to me. And it's something that only with the help of white people, I could, you know, alter that back to my natural self. I don't have to maintain this, perceived image, or I don't want to ramble, but I think my message is there.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Satira.
Sarah.
Thank you so much.
We're going to take one more. And then I actually got to go. There's something I got to do at noon, and I got to get ready for it. Nancy Lee.
Thank you. I realize I've spoken already once, but I really wanted to put out there the idea that what we're talking about is exquisitely important, and really put out there the idea that this directly influences our direct practice. And I would really love to see us and organizations talk so much more about how this affects our practice, our interactions with clients, how we apply these interventions. And really, because ultimately for me, I really want to see our society, individuals healed, thriving. I mean, that's really what this is about, particularly our youth. So really that idea that we really need to really focus in as well on how we can actually integrate this stuff and really increase our practice.
I agree. Thank you, Nancy.
All right, we're going to wrap this up. I put a link in the chat. It's a I don't want to call it feedback. It's a feedback form. We appreciate you taking a moment to fill it out. I want to thank Nasiah especially. One thing she sent me before this was an article. I'm going to summarize the title. It was, like why it's important for people of color to have their own spaces, right? And, part of what I think the article shared was that it's exhausting having to explain race to white people was part of it. Yes. So thank you for being willing to get here and educate some white people, right? I get it. Took a lot of courage, a lot of vulnerability. It took something to be here. So, thank you for stepping forward and having what was a private conversation with, 100 people, right?
And Scott, can I just interrupt you for a second? Can I say thank you so much? First, thank you to you. I appreciate having this public-private conversation. And thank you to everybody who showed a deep bow to you. Because I had to be vulnerable, but so did everybody here. I greatly appreciate it and definitely look forward to creating more spaces like this in the future to address these issues within our field.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, and thank you to everyone. I'm going to put the link to that survey in one more time, and I'll include it in a follow-up email. I got to pretty much jump right over to something else, so the email will come a little later, and then we'll figure out how to get a recording out to people. I think that's it. Thank you guys so much. And with that, I'm declaring the morning, the afternoon, the event complete.
Okay.
All right, and Nasiah, we'll connect later on to debrief and talk. Okay.
Sounds good.
All right.